We are here to talk about Lead to Lease. We are talking about kind of the journey for our renters. I'm Christi Weinstein with BH, our Chief Operating Officer.
Daniel Paulino with Reputation.
I'm Mariya Heath. I'm with Avenue 5 Residential, SVP of CX and Marketing Performance.
I'm Eliza Lochner with Airbnb. I look after marketing for the real estate group.
Sherry Freitas, Cushman & Wakefield, President of Asset Services.
So we've got a really great panel for you all today, some awesome questions to go through and hear from these experts up here on the stage, all their good thoughts. We've had some great prep sessions, so you're in for a treat this morning. All right, so the first question for our panel is, how are owners, operators, and technology partners rethinking the first digital touch points of the leasing journey to build trust, to build clarity, and differentiate at the very top of the funnel?
So I can take the first stab at this. So it's no surprise to anybody in this room that technology has changed tremendously over the last 5 years. COVID really kind of, expedited our need to change the way that we market to people. I think the next iteration of this is AI and how that's going to play into what our residents or future prospects want to see or do see. And so all of our different digital touch points at the front end of the journey, our website, our Google pages, they're all chocked full of information now. More and more information is getting put there, but they're going to start going to AI to do their research, right? They're going to go to ChatGPT, they're going to go to Claude, they're going to start doing those things. And so all of those different digital touch points at the front have to be trust signals that push all of that information to whatever AI system is going to pull it in. Because if they go there and they see one price and then they go somewhere else and there's another price, and they see a list of amenities somewhere and they go somewhere else and it's not there, and their virtual tours, for instance, don't match then what they get when they get to the property to take a tour, that degrades trust and then we are lost. So we have to make sure that all of those different touch points, very at the top of the funnel, are, again, trust signaling and making sure that those all align to push that information to AI the way that it should.
And I'm going to add something, because our customers have changed over the years, and especially because now they have all this information readily available all the time, which means that they're gaining all of that information up front. So they're probably not looking at 5 or 6 deals. They may be looking at 2, because they've done all their homework. So what they're doing when they actually come to our properties, they're coming to verify, right? And so I think the one thing we need to remember is that our window is really small for that accuracy and for that experience. And the second that it becomes choppy, that's when we lose people along the way.
Yeah, and I would just build on what both of you were saying with differentiation and the Airbnb program, Airbnb Friendly program, is a way a lot of our partners are standing out and differentiating their communities. The program allows renters to host their homes when they go on vacation or when there's a big event in town. And our partners market this program to prospects and their residents. So they differentiate on top of the funnel. We've partnered with different ILSs like Apartment List and Zumper, and those properties get more property views, they get more photo engagement, they get more high quality leads, and they get more unneeded property contacts. So we also see that our partners survey their residents, and our largest operator surveyed over 40,000 residents, and 90% of those residents said they wanted that amenity. So it's free to those partners. They market it on their digital touch points, and it helps them attract those top of funnel prospects to their communities.
So what I would add is that, we all know that the chatbots, AI chatbots, really are that discovery layer now, right? That's where prospects are going to search before they go anywhere else. So while they may still end up on a property website, they may still end up on an ILS. Generally, more and more prospects on a daily basis are using AI chatbots. And what I think is really particularly interesting about how that's so different than the past is that SEO, which is something we've all heard for many years, used to be something that you could kind of hack your way into, right? You could do backlinks, you can have your company or your community mentioned in a top 10 best article, and those are all basically SEO hacks to surface higher on search results. And what I think is really neat for consumers, and it has implications for all of us, is that you can't do that with AI. You can't kind of hack your way into AI recommending you. So Mariya mentioned the trust signals. That's something that we see is really important. So I work for a company who helps with reputation management, and we partner very closely with Google and other companies that are building these AI algorithms, and there's such a huge weight that they place on authentic sentiment of real customers. So this is not, getting named in a top 10 best apartment community article. This is really looking at social media mentions, at your actual reviews. And we even see that even beyond reviews, one of the things that a lot of management companies aren't focused on is that getting good reviews is not enough. Getting a quantity of reviews, velocity of reviews, and even how you respond to them are all or how frequently you respond and the quality of your responses are actually play a huge part in whether AI actually recommends you. So won't go into that much more deep, but I would say it's just really an exciting time for consumers because you get recommended things that are actually using so many signals of authenticity versus in the past not really knowing if you can trust what was recommended as being best of whatever that you were searching for.
Yeah, it's a really good point. The trust and the transparency, consistency across all channels is really important, and kind of leaning more into that. Let's talk about what technologies, data, or content strategies are having the biggest impact in helping our prospects confidently self-qualify, and how are providers and operators working together to make those experiences more complete and consistent? Sherry, you have thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think the one thing that we need to make sure is that it's very seamless, because the second that there's friction in the process, we lose people. At some former companies that I've worked for, we really measured when did people drop off? Like, when is there a certain part in the application process? Is there a certain part in the leasing process? Was it when they reached out to a chat bot and needed questions answered? Like, so measuring all of those touch points and when somebody is actively staying involved. I think we all probably we might not walk into department stores today, but we don't really want to talk to anybody, right? Unless we have to. And so I think that making sure that every single piece, and that's the hard part with what we're doing, is that because some of the chatbots may not be able to sense sarcasm or some of the things. So there's a lot of places that this could break. And so making sure that we've kind of thought those things through and that we have an out. And then if they do get interrupted, how do we re-engage with that person right away? I think the other thing, when I think about how we use AI, especially in our business, is that, we collect data all along the path. And so we have all this information, and then the person shows up at our property and wants to tour, or maybe they don't, but if they do, the last thing they want to do is go through the whole process again and reiterate all the information they've already provided. And so, how can we prep those leasing associates on site with all that information so that when that prospect walks in, they know their name is Judy, and they have a dog named Fluffy, and they want an apartment over the pool, and maybe even a step further, that they know everything about their comps. They know their property has the largest pet park in the market. They know that no one else has the self-cleaning ovens or whatever it is. But what are the things that we can give as resources to our site teams to become the experts that they really want?
Yeah, I think that's really good. I think, when considering the technology choice, that's exactly the sentiment of how do you choose a customer-centric solution to where whether you have an internal contact center or you have field associates that are, caring for your walk-in traffic, it's how can that information flow from one part to the next part without having to repeat themselves. We talked about this just a few moments ago of, you've got to call your credit card company because, somebody might have taken some of your money, and you're having to go through that conversation multiple times before you get to the right department, and you're answering the same questions over and over, and that experience is just it's aggravating, right? And so what are those, solutions that you can put into play that help support that experience wholly, whether that is within your organization, at your community or a sister community, where again, like how do you support that whole interaction to where I already know about you, even though you don't know about me, and we're gonna, help get you to where you want to be.
Well, they only tour a property because they want to know that they've verified that you are what they think you are, and that they know you're going to take care of them when they do. Sometimes they don't even want that. I mean, I know when I have to pick up the phone and call somebody for an appointment or something, it drives me crazy. Why can't I do this online? Because it's such a simple process. We just need to make this very simple for everybody, and because when we have those interruptions, that's when somebody will go somewhere else.
Yeah, and I think the point is that we want a frictionless experience. We, on the other side, are trying to put point solutions in place. Sometimes it is wild how many point solutions we have behind the scenes. If we also make it incredibly difficult for our site teams to get from point A, where we are driving the lead into the property, to point B, where they are doing the tour, those leads get lost, and that is where marketing goes to die, right? So it's something that I'm very passionate about, but we've got to figure out what those point solutions look like, how they all build together, and what that looks like from both sides. It can't just be let's make this the easiest thing possible for a resident. It also has to be easy for the site teams, and the two don't need to be different, right? They shouldn't be. If we're working agnostically in one system and everything looks great, then I think it's the best whole solution all the way around. How many people in this room have actually been, whether you're on the supplier side or whether you're on the multifamily side, have actually gone through and looked at your renter journey and maybe tried it yourself, like actually been all the way through it yourself, right? Yeah, so we try to look at this now that we're layering technologies in all the time to say, what does this new technology then mean for both a renter and for our site teams? And at the end of the day, does this help us rent apartments for everybody? And does it make it a better experience all the way around? Maybe the fraud piece is a great experience for our site teams, but it's a horrible experience for our renter because we're bouncing them from one thing to the next. Maybe we're telling them they've got to pay application fees here, and then when they get to the property, they've got to give certified funds or things like that, that we've just really got to iron out the kinks now that we've got so many technology solutions to focus them down to kind of one. I mean, the dream would be one point solution. That's probably never going to happen across all of our different technologies, but to play nice all together to make it a seamless experience is what I think where we're trying to go.
Yeah.
In the Airbnb friendly program, I would say there's two examples in terms of contact strategy that really help self-qualify leads to a property. So one, we have earnings calculators on our in our Airbnb friendly marketplace. So that's a marketplace where renters can come and shop all the Airbnb friendly buildings that are available. There's a calculator where they can see what is the rent and then how much they can earn when they host. So they can kind of get a sense of the money they could make. They can kind of do a little bit of their own kind of mental math and what the impact could be on their living expenses were they to live there and host there. That also is a page that's available to the properties and the residents. So people are already living in the community, and when the property markets this amenity to their residents, they can go and kind of take a look and do that same math. So that really helps residents and prospects understand the impact of hosting. And they can become a lead or they can become a host. And then also we have, so those residents who are hosting, they are merchandised on that page. So a prospect can say, hey, I'm interested in this community. What better way to understand what it's like to live there than to stay a night before staying a year? So they can actually book right there. They don't have to, they could take a tour, they could become a lead, but they could actually stay in the community and see what it's like for themselves. So that's a really great way that prospects can truly understand what it's like to live there, experience it for themselves. It's a whole different type of, lead prospect for the community. And that's kind of a new innovation that, is kind of interesting for our partners.
I'm going to add one other thing. One of the things we need to remember is that when our teammates have friction, it takes their focus off of what they're supposed to do. And I don't know about anybody else, but leasing people drive revenue, and that should be the most important thing that we think about every single day. And if they're not focused on driving revenue in every aspect and they're focused on technology and how to make it work, we failed them.
That's such a great point. Actually leads us into the next question, Sherry. So thanks for teeing that one up. So the question here is how are organizations using tools and workflows such as AI and centralized leasing to help free up leasing teams for those human moments to build trust and drive decisions? Do you have thoughts on that one?
Well, I'll just start again.
Everybody.
I think every bit of AI that we can do to take some of the inefficiencies out of the lives of our teammates, and that could be as simple as making sure that our service teams are using systems that will allow them to free up their time so they can focus on making sure our market-ready units look good, that they make sure that our properties look really good. And then, our managers, can we pull things off of their plate? Resident letters. We can write anything with, Copilot. And how do we make sure they know how to use those things effectively? Because when we've taken those functions off of their plate, we're also allowing them to spend more time with those leasing people, coaching them, making sure that they have, maybe they're also helping to close that lease that's sitting in the office. So what are the things that we can we have a lot of mundane processes in our business. And so how do we take those off of the teams to make sure that they really be able to do our core business, which is leasing apartments and taking care of residents?
Yeah, I think we have fully embraced leasing technology on the AI side with our partners and trying to take that beginner renter journey off the plates of our leasing associates and our property managers so that they can spend time doing things, I call it moments that matter, with residents, so that if we have a resident who comes in and really has an issue, or they're just walking their dog, that they can take the 5 seconds to have a really meaningful interaction instead of having to go through all of the leads and respond to each one individually with the same exact information over and over again. That AI technology takes us to close faster through that initial funnel and more poignantly to a place where we can have those interactions with residents or future residents that are meaningful. Listen, when we first started with leasing AI, and I think a lot of people have said, well, you can just go all the way through. We don't ever have to talk to a prospect again. This is gonna be great. We can focus on just the operational stuff on site now, and we don't have to close a lease. That's not true. We did a lot of A/B testing on this, and we found really impactful, measurable change in our KPIs when we took the AI, we did it to a certain point, and then we know when that human interaction really matters to close the lease. And also, if you're getting that human interaction at the lease close and the move-in and all of those special touch points, then you get a happier resident who will renew later. There are lots of statistics that you can talk about probably for those happiness quotients at move-in that really impact the whole renter journey even after that.
I actually wanted to weigh in on the previous question in regards to, Mariya, you talked a lot about the point solutions and how that impacts the resident experience because, frankly, in multifamily, we have no shortage of tech. So we've been chasing tech for so long that now it's like all of a sudden 10 years later, we realize we actually have so much tech. And the frustrating part about it is that as a consumer, as a resident, you're used to companies that you, that you work with every day or technology that you work with every day really using everything they know about you to improve your experience. And we haven't been doing that at scale in multifamily. You interact as a resident or even as a prospect with so many different technologies, and it's like having that old school call center experience where they need to transfer you to a colleague and they haven't told the colleague, so they have to repeat the entire story. That's what we do. We haven't really used AI to its capability to really act as like a middleware that ties all of the experience. Because honestly, residents leave what I always kind of think of it as digital fingerprints everywhere. They're all day long interacting with other residents, fobbing in and out, either they're, going. There's so many different things that they're doing, whether it's your website, resident experience, payment systems, and we're not tying that together. And so, who in this room doesn't use, whether it's Spotify or Netflix or YouTube or TikTok, all of those, the reason you like that technology is that it's personal to you, right? Like when you travel, if you go to a rental and you open up their Netflix, you're like, what is all this? This is like stuff that's recommending to me that I don't, right? But when you go to a hotel and you can log in and it's yours, it's a totally different experience. And that's what we really haven't done well in multifamily. And that's what I'm excited about, kind of the next frontier with AI. It's not just the leasing experience, it's actually tying together all of your data to make that experience feel super personalized. And I think that's kind of where we're starting to see some technologies that are doing that, but it hasn't scaled out well enough yet. So that's what I'm excited about, is where we can take a more kind of 30,000 foot view of the entire journey and continuously give those surprise and delight moments where everything that they've given us about themselves, what they like, what they don't like, we're using it to make their experience better every day.
A couple years ago, I moved into an apartment temporarily between houses, and I worked for the company that owned the deal. And I remember my move-in experience was that they, I signed my paperwork and did everything online, but then they told me I had to download these 5 apps to live there. I had to have one to open the door, I had to have one to open the main door, I had to have one to get my packages out, I had to have one to communicate with the site team, and then I had one other one that was, gosh, now I can't even remember what it was. And I went to the owner and I said, did you know that I had to download 5 apps for this? And he's like, well, why did you have to do that? And I'm like, because we're not thinking about this whole process. We're just doing it in bits and pieces. So if there's anything we can do, it's just how do we make this seamless and easy?
Yeah, I always tell my team that's the next shiny object syndrome, and what we in marketing especially go, ooh, that's gonna be cool, or ooh, that's really cool. But if it doesn't all work together, people are out. They don't care how cool it is if they have to download 15 apps.
I think there's the moments that matter piece of that conversation where there's a tough balance between the idea that prospects and or residents want a self-service option and then just-in-time support, right? So it's like, how do you find that perfect, marriage where, okay, I can support myself to this point, but when I need you kind of mentality. Okay, so what does it take from both the owner and the operator and provider perspectives to align systems data and teams so prospects can move fluidly between digital and human touch points without the friction? So are there certain technologies that you're thinking about in that, the leasing journey that helps kind of navigate the path?
Well, I think making sure that your data is all in one spot, because if you have to go to 5 different places to find the data, they're not going to do that, and they're not going to understand the whole journey. So I think making sure that your systems are talking together, so integrations are first and foremost in my mind. That's the first question I ask a potential supplier partner is, are you integrated with my systems? Because if you're not, then we don't even need to waste our time and have a conversation. So I think that's first and foremost, but anything that we can do that provides, like, at that point of contact, information so our teams can use it to better support our residents. And then, the other side of that is, like, we have owners that want to know all of the data as well. And so how do we make sure that data is accurate across the systems? The calculations are the same, that when we give them one number and they look at a different report, that number's not different. Yeah. Because they're checking boxes for us too. So to me, it's making sure, and the thing about AI is that I can ask my systems all kinds of questions and I can come up with different answers the more I kind of get more detailed in the questions that I ask. So really making sure that you're not leaving really important data points out when you're kind of analyzing data. Because like if you look at two pieces of data and make a decision, you very well could be making a bad decision because you haven't looked at everything that really could play an important part.
So I agree with everything you said there. I think it's really, we haven't prioritized enough our data strategy in multifamily. It's always about the end experience of an app or a solution, right? And the data becomes an afterthought. And we all, we're also optimistic about the capabilities of AI, and it's already doing a lot for our businesses, but I think we've only scratched the surface of truly what AI is going to be able to do for our companies and residents in the future. And all of that really hinges on data. Data is the fuel for AI. Like AI systems are extremely capable, but without standardized, structured data, they can't really have the full potential that they're capable of. So we really need to prioritize that. That's something that's really important. Most companies aren't thinking about that. They just have solution after solution. There's no orchestration of any of that data into a centralized repository that is then going to unlock new capabilities of AI, tying it all together. So that's something that we really need to think about. And then to your question about the physical versus digital, I don't think about it that way because customers don't think about it that way, right? We are a physical asset industry, so we tend to think of, well, this is what happens at the property and this is the property team members, and then at corporate we have people that work in digital or digital experience, digital strategy, and they're thinking about our online ecosystems, our resident experience systems. Customers don't think about it. It is a brand experience. It's a full experience. So whether you're going physical, digital, that's always going to be shifting. On a daily basis, you can have those multiple experiences as a resident, but they don't think of it as, well, hey, this company does amazing in my physical experience, but then digital, they just think about it all as one. Sure. And that's where we really need to stop thinking about it as a separate thing, because at the end of the day, it is a brand impression. One example that I always use is, I do love Apple. Like I have a lot of their hardware, and there's, obviously the software ties all of it together. But what's really particularly interesting is like when you go to the stores, all of this chaotic world in the stores with so many different employees and hundreds of customers, it becomes like an organized experience, because now your physical world is being tied together by the software. The software is telling them who to take care of next, who to bring out an item for. They tell you to hang out in a random corner, and then somehow somebody does come out and find you. If you think about it, that's a blend of physical and digital. But you don't think of it that way. You're just like, that was either a good experience or a bad one.
Yeah, that's a great point. Okay, so how are defining and measuring success across the leasing journey beyond lead volume to ensure technology investments are driving conversions and long-term renter relationships? So we're investing in the technology, so how are we assessing that?
So I think this one is really important for us, is that we pilot, we test, we figure out what is actually working before we do a full-scale launch, and then we figure out what a KPI is, right? I think those are somewhat ambiguous now with the top of the funnel and the AI piece of this and how that's all going to shake out. We'll all maybe know next year because it's moving so fast. But I think it's really important for us to make sure that, to our point, all of this data is then aggregated and we are looking at these KPIs up funnel. It's not always, especially in the marketing realm of this or the sales piece, going to be, well, how many leases did I get from that particular source, right? It's going to be, again, back to the beginning of this, maybe those trust signals, did all of the places that we were advertising, aggregate that, push it to AI, ChatGPT sent us leads because we're in the top 10 list for ChatGPT, and does that then turn into a conversion? Whatever that looks like, right? I think the multi-touch attribution for us is going to be more important than ever with the addition of all of this technology, because we're not going to be able to tie leads to, like I call it, balloons and banners, right? We're not going to be able to say, like, that sign spinner really did that. We haven't done that for a while, but it's just an example. But it's still that way. I think when we talk about PPC, or we talk about all of these up funnel channels, our ILS providers, it's going to be maybe less about how many leads we actually captured from them and what they're doing to push us towards a number one ranking in a GEO or something like that. So it's really going to be an interesting and fun challenge for us in the marketing realm to figure out how we measure and quantify that, and then how we signal that to our owners or anybody else in the space that is not necessarily specifically marketing minded. And the way to do that is with KPIs, because asset managers at the end of the day are numbers people, right? They care about NOI, and they care about where we're driving that value. And so we have to figure out how to translate our fluffy marketing love of leads to how did we drive actual increase in retention and leads and capturing all of those heads and beds at the end of the day.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So, obviously Airbnb makes money from booking revenue, right? We're not making any money from our partners' activities until that happens, so until we have host activation. But it's really important that we're actually driving leases for our partners, that this program is actually driving long-term unfurnished leases. So, and that's what it's doing. So it's not just that the existing residents are becoming hosts, that they're actually driving incremental leases, and we're reducing their cost of acquisition. But even that isn't enough. We are looking at the overall lifetime value of the renter. What is happening to the rent per square foot after hostings in the community? What's happening to resident sentiment? Are the guest reviews high? Are the hosts reviewing the guests high? What is the average daily rate compared to the comps? So what is that ancillary revenue that the building is gaining as the sort of cherry on top? So we're looking at the full mix for our partners, and our partners pilot often. They expand everywhere else they can when they're happy with the results they're seeing. So that's how we take a look at it.
Well, I think too, that's where AI, I think, really will come into play, is can it indicate what trends we're seeing in different activities? Because we may not be able to see that. We're so accustomed to looking at, conversion of lead to lease, or, phone call to visit. And there's probably a lot of other things that fall into that we may not necessarily see connections in. And I think really, if we can figure out a way to make sure that we're identifying those connections that aren't typical, we might see some really interesting ways to change how we do things.
Yeah, I think this is really exciting. We have rolled out a lot of technology over the last couple of years, and really looking at kind of what the renter impact is of that. We use survey data to do that. So we, this year, tasked ourselves and our survey provider, Grace Hill, with kind of figuring out whether or not these programs were impactful by looking at the properties where we had gone all in with these technologies and said, yes, we're going to use them, from the leasing funnel, from enlisting built, from all of these different things, and saying, did this actually make an impact on the happiness quotient, or the renter's choice to renew, or how satisfied they are at our properties? And what we could see was actual, real, measurable change in resident sentiment and happiness quotient going up at those properties where we did go all in on these technologies, which is really exciting to see. And I would encourage everybody here to have those benchmarks and make sure that you are also looking at those things with regard to your technologies, because if you're putting them in place and nothing changes, then what did we do it for, right? The whole point is that we need to be able to do that. And then also, in this environment where every dollar is heavily scrutinized because of the way that the economy is and the way that we are headed, just generally speaking, as far as not having the lowest interest rates that we've ever had. I always say we're no longer kind of in the land of milk and honey from a multifamily standpoint. How do we justify any additional cost? Well, we have to tie it back to what is important to all of our investors and our clients and everything else. And that means saying, yes, you're going to spend money on X, Y, and Z, but look, it's going to increase your NOI at the end of the day because you're going to have more renewals, you're going to have better move-in experience, and you're going to have a happier resident base, generally speaking. So they're not going to come into your office pissed off and talk to your leasing staff for an hour about some problem that they have. They're going to come in, say hello, be happy, and move on with their day. And so I think that's really important to understand that we can measure those things effectively, and we should, so that we can justify any of these programs to anyone who is investing.
Yeah, we talk a lot about that. I call it the so what, who cares? So what about this technology or this process or this workflow, and why do we care about that? What's the return that it's going to drive? So that's good. Okay, let's look ahead. So grab y'all's crystal balls. 3 to 5 years down the road, what will define a best-in-class leasing experience, and what are you intentionally building today to make that future scalable, measurable, and human-centered?
Well, I'll start just because I want to make sure we think about this, because our customers changing and how they buy changes every day. And so I think if we can find the systems that will easily adapt to how our customers decide to lease an apartment or to buy, if we, because some of them are going to still want to come in the office, but a lot of them won't. And so how do we make sure that we can provide all the information and the process that will make it kind of cater to what they want it to be? And that's probably the hardest part, is like, because everybody's going to want it differently.
Yeah.
So, probably everybody in this room uses AI chatbots on a daily basis. And if you do, you know that it's much better today for you than it was that same chatbot 2 years ago, because over that time, it's gotten a lot more context from you. It knows a lot more about you. And that makes the utility of it increase significantly for you. So my prediction is that 3 to 5 years from now, we're going to be in a hyper-personalization era in multifamily where we're collecting all the context all the time. I mean, even if we think about just the prospect experience right now, most of the industry, as you all know, is third party. If you go to the same third party management company, one property, and then you go visit the next one, it's like there's so much lost in translation there, even just from the tech piece of it, like the fact that I had a guest card here and a guest card there. But if you try to even layer in like the human experience, like I told your humans X, Y, and Z at that property this, and now I'm going to visit your other property, and it's like that context will be brought over. My prediction is there's going to be a lot of AI used in the leasing process that humans, whether it's through some kind of voice recording technology or whatever it may be, they're going to be translating that from when you go from one community to the next. So that if I already told this person I have a pet, X, Y, and Z is important to me, now I go to the next one and it's like seamless. That's what consumers are going to expect. They already get that, again, from so much of the technology they use every day. So I really think that that's where we're headed in this industry, and hopefully sooner than later, because we're already behind the curve on that.
In 3 to 5 years, so I'm going to go 5, probably is even ambitious for this, but we talk about resident apps all the time now and how we gather and aggregate all of this data and do all of these things in one point solution. With the advent of AI, I really actually think that, and I said this last year actually on a similar panel, but that the idea of a physical app on your phone, I don't think is going to exist in 5 to 10 years, actually. I think you will be so ingrained in whatever personal agent you have from an AI perspective and your chat agent that you've built for yourself to, be the concierge of your life, that you will be able to tell it, to put in a maintenance order for you. And hopefully with the right technology partners, we are building a customer arc that it will be able to talk to that and say, yep, got it, done. It's done. And then when it's done, it'll signal back to you that it was done. All of these types of things, right? Like then you won't ever have to pull up an app, open an app, and have an app be where you're communicating for the 15 different things that you have. That chat agent that's designed for you will now mess with these other apps and do all the things that you need done within those ecosystems, and that will be your hub or your point solution for your everyday life.
Well, Airbnb's vision is to build the ultimate travel concierge. And last year, we built a feature where you can cancel a reservation with the click of the button, and that already reduced human contact with agents by 15%. So this year we'll be rolling it out to other countries and other languages. And next for us is AI search. And with our launch of experiences and services, our vision is not just to be the ultimate travel concierge, but ultimate concierge for travel and living. So services for experiences where you're on trips, but also services in your everyday life. Services like you need a plumber or things like that. Ultimately, the technology and AI, we think it's best at making your life more efficient. And what we're really trying to do, our goal is to connect people in the real world, in making those human connections. And so I think when it comes, to leasing, if I had a prediction, I would like to see that, the AI make the leasing experience feel less like a transaction, and when you're really just coming into a really well-run, warm community, and the humans are very focused on what humans do best, and that's create really genuine human relationships, and they're focused on loyalty.
Yeah, those are all really great predictions. We'll check back in 3 to 5 years and see what we got right, what we got wrong.
We'll all wear little badges that say we
did it.
Failed.
We passed.
Yeah. Perfect.
I think you touched on something really interesting, Sherry, when it is I also agree, right? Prediction from it's going to be about convenience. Like, how are we setting up our renters to all about, like, how can they do this seamlessly? We've talked about that, but through leveraging their own agents from a concierge perspective. I think there's going to be a lot more into that, which requires so much more integration than I think even some of our partners are ready for at this point. And so it will definitely be a journey. But what you touched in on is, where the goes back to where the human element makes sense. And that, I think, is still the ongoing operator struggle of, we still have labor challenges, we still have inconsistencies, we still have people working on site that may not deliver consistently every single time. And it's like, those are still the parts where, if we can get the technologies where they're leveraging those, where truly the focus is that sales and service mentality, we may have a real shot there. So appreciate all of the expertise and conversation on the panel today. Thank you all for participating with us. Great job.
You too.
Thank you.
Christi.